The housing crash.
Mm.
When is it finally going to happen? Right? There's been people with crash videos for years with really good data, good looking charts. Every 2 days, a brand new reason why it has to crash now. It has to crash soon. It's right around the corner, giving people a good excuse, a good reason to not take action. I mean, if there is going to be a crash and process prices are going to be 50% in next year, might make sense to wait. So why hasn't it happened? Let's start with Matt, the calmest of us. When you see the Crash Bros videos and Crash Sister videos of the new reason why there's a crash coming.
You guys all got professional training on how to meter down. I haven't been so lucky. You guys get trained on how to de-escalate. Not me. Everyone's just like, let's just push the button and let them go. Like the idiot chimp. I mean, I think, it's like what we've talked about, so I think it was December of 22 when I did a video with Zuber, and we were talking about what's going to be the annual rate of sales. And I said, it's going to be sub 4 million. And he's like, no way. Should have made that bet. But he said I said it's going to be sub 4 million, and we're going to be on track. Like, we're going to be itching sub 4 million this year. I think next year I think it's going to be the same. And somebody that I don't always necessarily agree with her, but Poison Ivy Zellman, her name is Ivy Zellman, but some people call her Poison Ivy. She predicted the Great Recession in 2008, and she's predicting that there's going to be years of sub 4 million home sales. Little late, Ivy, I beat you, but still, nonetheless, I think that that's what we're in for. We're in for a stagnant market. We're in for not a whole lot of volume because people aren't going to want to trade out of their 2.5% and 3% mortgages unless they're forced to. And even what's being built and demand in the new construction stuff, they're subsidizing it. They're subsidizing it to 5.5%, 5.7%. So the high rates haven't really hit the new housing market. They're really only hitting the existing homes market, which is what's slowing that down. So thank God my bet with Zuber is on median home sales price being down 10% from peak. And I still have 5 quarters left. But we're making headway there. We're down about 4.25% from the median home price sale high. And I think that the boring story is going to continue to be no volume. I mean, I've seen, there's literally hundreds of thousands of agents that have given up their real estate license. Probably a good idea. They probably should have never gotten in the first place.
We're going to see more of that.
Oh, yeah,
so
for sure.
Now you take out and you add all the confusion of how does the buying agent get paid?
Yeah.
Especially if you have something like the VA loan where you're not allowed to charge a fee. Like, that NAR lawsuit's going to upend things more.
Oh, yeah.
Well, in conjunction with reduced number of transactions from high prices, high rates, high cost of building. Mike, when is the crash coming? When is it finally going to be at our doorstep?
Well, happy Thanksgiving, first and foremost, to the both of you guys. Celebrate the holiday. Yes. Grateful to be here with you guys, my friends. Grateful to be here with the people who are watching us online right now, for those who join us at Futureland. The housing crash is an amazing topic because there's so many people out here with the secret sauce on their real estate channels. And, they're predicting it, they're forecasting it, they're trying to figure out when it's going to happen so that you can be better prepared to take advantage of the next crash, just like the people who were smart enough to take advantage of the last one, like you two guys. Unfortunately, I was 17 and a junior in high school and making the critical mistake of graduating high school instead of buying real estate.
Absurd excuse.
Yeah, right, exactly. I know. I should have, you know what? Cody probably would have figured out a way to do it at 16 if he'd known. But I think he was only 6 at the time. So anyways, here's how you can predict the next crash. It's very simple. The law of economics are undefeated. Supply and demand govern everything. I mean, and not even just things that you purchase, but I mean, the value of an individual, people's individual's worth as an employee, labor is purchased. Supply and demand. If we look at and I'm going to pull this data right here from Housing Wire. This is an article that was written last year, but it's still relevant. And it says that The total housing inventory to date, end of 2022, was 1.14 million nationwide. However, the total housing inventory in 2007 was 4 million. There's a massive gap in the available supply of housing units today versus back then. And that's why we saw that crash in prices. When you flood the market with supply, but demand stays the same or worse in 2007, 2008, drops because of unemployment, well, then prices have to fall. This is quite literally economics 101. It's like what they teach you on the first day of econ in high school is supply and demand. And we know that back then, the reason why the crash happened was because demand got destroyed as unemployment went up and people lost their jobs, and supply skyrocketed because people couldn't afford their houses. They flooded the market, and then the supply went up. So until we see that or something similar to that, there will be no crash. And when unemployment numbers start going way up, that's the first indicator. Number two, supply starts going up. Then you can predict a crash accurately.
A couple of missing pieces of data there was in 2007, we had 51% adjustable rate mortgages. So you have unemployment on the rise, home prices not going up, people not being able to refinance because their agent said, oh, don't worry, in 2 years, prices will go up so much, you'll just get a new mortgage. And ninja loans. The people who went on unemployment and could no longer afford their mortgage also borrowed more than they should, borrowed 105% of the value so that they could wrap the closing costs into it. We have stricter lending now. It dropped all the way down to 8%. Well, for a while, it was 3% adjustable rate mortgages, but now it's hovering between 8 and 13, depending on where you get your information from. And people have equity, right? So supply and demand is a thing. Unemployment would have to go high. It would have to stay there for a year. We don't have the adjustable rates. We already had strict lending. So, but let's take the logic train to the next depot. You've got first people saying, I'm going to wait until there's a housing crash and then I'll buy. So for the last couple of years, you even had people that I often agree with when it comes to, they would say there's no housing crash. So Meet Kevin and Graham Stephan came out with several videos called Housing Crash. And then like this video, they would talk about, when's it going to happen? We don't have this data. It's not coming soon. So their thumbnails and titles were on the Crash Bros train, but their information wasn't. So I was like, oh, I'll watch these guys. But for about 2 years, both of them kept saying the same thing. When interest rates start to go up, for every percent that interest rates go up, home prices will come down 10%. They said it over and over and over until YouTube University kind of started to spread the information that when interest rates go up 1%, buying power goes down 10% for the person who needs the mortgage. So what happens is you have less transactions, a higher percentage of transactions happen in cash. So the interest rates aren't as much of a factor. It's a redeployment of 1031 funds. So the interest rates don't have an impact of driving prices down. They do drive down transactions. And then we take it one more station after that. And this is where I've got friends that are in this boat. Home prices went up, interest rates went up, so they can't buy. And they're not in the I'm going to wait for a housing crash boat. They get the logic of, we don't have adjustable rates, we don't have high unemployment, we're still at record low unemployment. They're going to wait for interest rates to come down so they can afford to buy. And what happens when interest rates come down? Matt, let's say right now the Fed came out and said, hey, we're going back to zero.
Oh, dear God.
We're going to do end of 2020 rates. We're at zero. So mortgages will be 3.5. Then people could just go and afford to buy a house. What would happen, Matt?
Oh, my word. Pricing would spike literally overnight. You would watch within the next week, you would see every available deal in your MLS buy box disappear that fast. It would be that. It happened when the 5% thing came out for 2s, 3s, and 4s. Same exact thing happened. We had maybe a half a dozen of them on the market. They were all under contract within a week, maybe 10 days. Now there's almost no inventory. And guess what it's done? Prices stuff is crappy. It's kept on going up. We were already buoyed on small multi 2s, 3s, and 4s. But when you change the calculus and all of a sudden now you're paying half the rate, your payment is going to be about, or it's less than half the rate, but with taxes, blah, 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 you're going to be about half the payment. And the rents didn't go down. Rents didn't go down. In fact, they've still gone up. I increased rents on units that I put out there in November. We don't rent in November. November is not a thing for us. If you're renting in November, you just finished your project or you made a mistake. In my case, it was both.
And for me, it's the opposite, because I live in a place where on the West Coast, there tends to be just as much demand in the winter months as there is in the summer. So you have to know real estate is local. Do what makes sense there. So if you hear some random guy on YouTube say, here's the 5 reasons why I want my leases to end in December or January.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you live in New Hampshire, the smartest state, literally, it just came out, that study, the smartest state in the nation. Don't follow my advice on what to do in my market with your leases if you're in that market, and vice versa.
Yes. Yeah, it is market dependent for sure. But yeah, I mean, as the market continues to shift, I explained it a little bit in my live stream on Sunday at 11:30 Eastern time. That's where you can find it on my channel. But I explained it a little bit because banks are absolutely withdrawing liquidity. They are factually doing that. And the reason that they're doing that is what we've all been talking about for a year, which is they're doing that to do workout loans on commercial deals. Most people have no idea of something called a participation. A participation deal is where there's 3 banks that all join forces to do a deal. So now you have 3 banks doing a deal. Here's the problem. Only the lead bank gets the deposits, and that's what gives you power in lending out more money. The 1 to 9 scenario, for every dollar you take in a deposit, you get to lend out $9, fractional banking. The problem is that when you do that, you then have bank number 2 and bank number 3 that participated at the same amount, let's say 10 million, 10 million, and 10 million. The problem is these 2 banks, they got nothing but money on their money. That's all they got. They didn't increase deposits. They didn't increase the number of the amount of lending that they could do. So this bank now has to increase their margin on the other loans that they're doing to cover the reserves that they're supposed to have for what this loan is in the rework, because it's not going to be at market, because if it is at market, it could push a default. So no bank wants the default. They don't want a partially done project. They don't want a new project. So when you look at it, and Rob brings it up brilliantly, it's the participation trophy. But all these bankers were loving spot 2 and spot 3 because they were like, they brought the deal to us. We get to participate. We still get 6 points on our money, and we still make 3% on that, or 1.5% on that. We still make our margin. This is awesome. No, it's not, because now they're having to work out this loan. These guys are having to work out the loan. They're not adding any value to their customers. And so now the rate isn't 1.5 in margin that the bank is charging over what they can borrow it for. Now it's 2.5, 2.75. And I just saw one Friday that was last Friday that was 2.95 margin. They're creating that margin to support the workout of those deals. So you might think that single family home or residential is going to be fine. The bank has a balance sheet, and that balance sheet, there's one for commercial, there's one for residential, but it's still one combined balance sheet under the banner of a bank. And so they will start having to give a bunch of their money and reserves to being able to do workouts on those commercials, which is going to make residential lending even tighter. So you can hold on as much as you want for rates to go down in a year. It won't matter. It really won't matter, because the banks are going to need to charge more margin for that money being lent out for them to work out those commercial loans that they're in the process of working out now. And that cycle has only just begun. The low rates of 2020 are now being refied on 3-year debt, and you're going to see a whole nother round of it on 5-year debt. I know.
Same
I just
question for Mike.
Sorry.
Same question for Mike. Interest rates drop to 0. Fed, right? So mortgage rates go to 3s. What do you think happens?
First of all, I immediately get on the phone with every single person I've helped purchase a house or an investment in the last year and a half, and I tell them refinance today. Lock that baby in. Every piece of debt that I have that I've done in the last couple of years that isn't already at a 3 or 4 immediately gets refinanced. All of my assets go up in value astronomically. I probably become a multimillionaire without buying any additional rental properties. We have another huge spike in inflation, which probably means that the government's going to start printing money again to try to combat it. They're going to make poor policy decisions. Rents will probably go back up as well. There will be a whole lot of great benefits if the government and the Fed are stupid enough to do this for people who already own assets. If you don't own assets and you're trying to buy something, yeah, exactly what Matt said. I don't even need to re-articulate all of it because he did a great job, but it's just going to be total chaos. It's going to be too expensive. The gap from people trying to get started and those who already have assets will continue to increase. It'll be ugly.
So Josh, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate that. And happy Turkey Day to you too. This is my introvert day to go off and be alone somewhere. So it's my almost favorite holiday for that reason.
I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think both of you are going to Friendsgiving. So
we are no Friendsgiving, only Friendsgiving, and it's good. It's one of their family, and we work a lot together, and our phones are constantly ringing. So our tagline is always, "I'll call you back." It's always that way. And so today is nice because our phone won't ring. We'll actually get a chance to sit and hang out.
Nice.
Yeah.
So those people that are waiting for interest rates to drop, you heard both of Mike and Matt, prices would spike. Refinancing would become huge. People would have equity to deploy. The problem that we have when it comes to interest rates is people are trying to project to make decisions instead of look at what's currently happening to make a decision. Warren Buffett even says, if I knew exactly what was going to happen with interest rates in 2 years, wouldn't change how I invest. So what we can do is we can look at interest rates now. For the last decade, up in maybe 2 years ago now, before that, interest rates were trending down and prices were trending up. So strategies like flipping, the Burr method, made a lot of sense because you could make mistakes that delayed your rehab, or your rehab costs went up. And if you waited another month or two, the market would correct higher, interest rates might drop lower, and it would fix your mistakes. That's not happening now. We had Mike with his example right at the beginning of interest rates doubling, where he was in the middle of two Burrs, interest rates doubled, still pulled it off, didn't start with that strategy. He already had, eight or something units in a portfolio to handle that when it happened. So what we've seen in the last 3 years when interest rates dropped really low was subject to and wraps. You could go to a bank. You can actually don't hide it, like we've seen some of the content creators say, where you just, you make an agreement with the owner and you own the mortgage. No, you actually go to the seller, to the bank, and say, I want to take over their mortgage. Well, the person had a mortgage at 3 or 4% and could get one for 2 or 3%. So the bank would lose interest if they refinanced in your name. So they were fine with seller financing a wrap where you took over the mortgage, that subject to that got a lot of hype in the last couple of years, versus now interest rates are on the rise. You want to do a subject to on somebody who has a 3% mortgage, and if you had to refinance, the bank would now get a 6 or a 7% mortgage. The odds of that lender calling the loan, a lot higher than they used to be. So when it comes to making decisions on buying rentals, waiting, I've said this before, there's only two things that tell you when to buy. None of it is interest rates. None of it is prices. None of it is rents. None of it's what's going on with the market or what you think is going to happen in the market in 6 months. What's currently happening in the market can tell you which strategy is the best one to use for you, right? There are times certain strategies make more sense, but it is never, I am going to wait for something you can't predict accurately to happen, because waiting will cost you. And it is never, I'm going to hurry, because hurrying will give you that anxiety, will stress you out, will limit your mental bandwidth for making good decisions, and it will cost you. And it looks like we lost Matt.
Hey, it's some of that infamous Wi-Fi he's got, right?
Oh, really? Ooh, ouch. Ironically, that happened like 3 times when I was at his house.
Yeah. I'm going to look for a comment that I just got on an Instagram reel about waiting for the crash. It was a great comment. And it just reminded me, I don't blame people for thinking the way that they think. Wanting the crash to come makes total sense. Because we look at what's happened in the past and we say to ourselves, okay, well, if I can just wait for this to happen again, then I can be smarter than people who bought at the wrong time. The problem is it's just not that easy to time these types of things, and they don't happen the way that we think that they would. Let me find this thing.
So while you're looking for that, Michael Zuber did something that is many things that he's done are borderline genius when it comes to investing. Right? In my opinion, getting out of stocks, getting into real estate, that was smart. But there was a point in time where he saw housing affordability hit a certain metric, and we didn't have the remote work that we have now. So it was actually a more accurate number. And he thought multifamily is going to have a significant amount of pain. All of this debt is resetting. Unemployment is high. So he sold off all of his single family and residential real estate and bought multifamily. So currently, right now, there are people that are watching. When we talked about interest rates are fixed, right? We have 8 to 13% adjustable rates now. So over 80% are fixed rate mortgages now. That's in residential. Almost all, the majority of commercial real estate is adjustable rates, and they're hitting their adjustment. They're 2 and 5 year adjustments coming up. So there's going to be a lot of pain in multifamily. So there are people that sit back and go, oh, well, this would be the time to sell off all the single family residential and buy commercial like Zuber did. But most of the people who are thinking that have been sitting there for the last 3 years not buying anything because they've been watching all of the Crash Bro videos thinking there's a crash coming in residential. So is there pain coming to commercial? Does it matter to you? Only if you have a few $1 million to deploy, which would be offloading all of your residential if you have it. If you don't have it, it's a moo point. It's like a cow's opinion. Nobody cares.
Okay, Joey.
Right, exactly. I was hoping somebody would get that reference. Right, geez. Because if you're quoting Friends, you're pretty old now, usually.
Yeah.
So the goal to be in the position where if you can actually track and see, okay, adjustable rate is hitting and there's going to be pain in the sector. It really only matters to the person who was taking action and has built a portfolio that they could, if they wanted to, sell and redeploy the funds. So did you find your comment?
I did. The first part of the comment is this is on a video I made about my Airbnb, and this guy leaves a comment saying he's grateful that Airbnb is gonna fall apart as a business model, and that all the Airbnbs are gonna flood the market and participate in helping it crash. I won't read the whole thing because it was like 3 paragraphs. But his second comment, when I came back and said I seriously doubt that the 1.2 million total Airbnb units of the 144 million total housing units is going to crash the economy, even if all of them flooded the market on the exact same day. I made a couple of points about math, and he responded with, I'll trust Peter Schiff, who says it's coming. Call it wishful thinking from a young person if you want, but when it happens, the government won't be able to save the banks this time. How much of a crash will depend on your area. Now, he is right about that. Individual areas can crash, and individual areas may be more susceptible. But this is a great example, and I responded to him. I was like, Peter Schiff has been predicting a crash, the end of the world, for the last 30 years. And even a broken clock is still right twice a day. If you say it's going to happen forever and ever, and then when it happens, you say, you see, I was right the whole time. That's not accurate economic analysis. That's just getting lucky. And I tried to explain, I was like, look, man, these people have made a name and a brand, and Peter Schiff in particular has been on the news, sold books, has a YouTube channel that makes the money all by saying it's going to crash. Hold on, hold off, wait. And then I highlighted to this guy, I was like, look, man, I've been making videos now for 7 years on my YouTube channel. And I can go back to like my second video and find comments about people saying, I ain't going to buy because I'm going to wait for the next crash. I can go back and pretty much every video I have that has ever gotten big and garnered enough comments, there's somebody who said, I'm just going to wait for the next one. The videos I made exposing reventure consulting turn 1 year old in a month. And those ones are filled with hundreds of comments of people defending him, telling me I'm wrong, and I'm waiting. I got it on my calendar. I'm going to go back and respond to every single comment. Told you so, told you so, told you so, told you so. You got nothing. You've got nothing. It didn't crash like they said. They all called me an idiot, and I'd be excited to see if any of them actually respond when I say it, told you so. But we'll see.
So the funny thing during the lives, and I'm going to point out kind of a nuance to YouTube for the people who watch a lot of my content. There's a lot of bots, a lot of porn, crypto bots that jump into chat during live streams and say stuff. So when we do a live stream, I don't know if Mike, you do this or if Matt does this, but I know that I do. I set it to where you have to be a subscriber and you have to have been a subscriber for 5 minutes. Right? There was a period where I've got several people who have the wrench next to their name because you guys are very helpful and you block the bots when they come into the chat. So I learned if I set it to subscribers for 5 minutes, there are people watching this right now that are Crash Bro fans that want to leave a comment, but they refuse to subscribe to a channel like mine because I've been saying, even if we knew there was a crash, it doesn't change how I would invest. I would be acquiring cash flowing deals. I'd benefit from a refinance in the future, increased equity in the future, increased rents if there is a crash, because that's what happens. But after this live stream, in the comment section, not during the live chat, that's where a lot of the Crash Bro friends jump in. With your guy like Mike, I don't usually respond more than once, right? I don't want to get into that. I'm not in the convincing business. And it actually doesn't benefit us to change someone's mind if they're waiting for a crash. What we're looking for is the person that isn't waiting for a crash, that knows, okay, whether there's a crash coming or not, how would I take action and be successful? Those are the people we're wanting to talk to. So I'll debate people in the BiggerPockets forums because I can be pretty aggressive there. But here, I just leave one comment and let them go, because I want to do that thing where you can look at your data and see what your viewers watch, what channels they watch, and see how many Crash Bro channels the people who watch my channels, my content the most watch. I'll do that one of these days. I should probably do it in live stream, so I'm just as shocked as everybody watching.
Mine is 100% you and Zuber and Lumberjack. It's like, here's what other content your viewers watch. It's just you three. There's like 12 videos, and it's all you guys every time. I'm like, nice.
Nice. Where would I find that?
I always find it on the YouTube Studios app on my phone. I don't know where to find it on the actual website. I always do it from my phone.
Okay. Share screen and try to find it.
Yeah, you'd be looking for a little while. I have to go on a
I would. I'd kill the live people would be like, this is boring. I'm out of here.
Right.
So I'll have to go and look up how to look it up and then do that live stream. So let's look at the comments here. Happy Turkey Day to everybody. Howdy. I see All-Nighter Hider. There's so many people ignorantly waiting for a housing crash, not in single family, and especially the starter homes. I agree. I want to, I almost don't want to say this because I want to get enough data together so it sounds articulate. Home prices aren't expensive because of limited supply. Home prices aren't expensive because investors are buying it. Hedge funds are buying it. Like 1.6% of homes are owned by hedge funds. It sounded like less than 1% of homes are Airbnb, right? Like so you said 1.6 million out of 140%, that's less than a percent. I want to get the data together, maybe whiteboard it, and really just go into, here's why homes are expensive. And I can use the car analogy. For a while, it was cheaper to buy a used car than a new car. And for a while, it flipped. End of 2020, early 2021, used cars were costing more than new. You can have a 6-month-old car, sell it for more than you bought it. And it was because of the chip shortage. Right? There was a shift going to EVs, and so we had to run out to find service. Howdy, Matt. You made it.
To get to Uncle Josh.
Hi, kids.
Did you forget a meeting?
Well, we had for some reason internet go out at the house or something like that, but I don't know. I digress. Now I'm just trying to turn up the volume up.
Nice.
That's all good. We were just sitting here talking about you anyway.
All good things.
It's understandable.
I exposed you for your beard extensions. I broke the internet by letting everybody know that it's not real.
Yeah, for some reason I'm not hearing you okay. Hold on one second. Let me try to do this.
Our friend Chesla sent him beard beads, which I've never seen him wear in a video yet. I think he's embarrassed.
Yeah, all I heard was the beard and Chesla, and yes, the beard is big and long. All right, well, talk amongst yourselves while I figure out how to get the volume up louder.
The Yoder says, I believe the crash is here when California investors stop paying cash for every property they can get in my area. Yes, they pay way over the list price. How can I outsmart them? So it could be California investors. It could be people deploying 1031 funds that are just looking at the initial investment and not the actual return on capital. How do you compete with cash buyers? Mike, suggestions on competing with cash buyers since you've been a cash buyer. There are people in Gary that are like, I want to buy that house, but that guy from Seattle took it all.
Yeah. So competing with cash buyers is actually, it's tough right now. It was a little bit easier when interest rates were better. And this is why I understand why people are so frustrated, because they watch all this content. They look at their market. There's no inventory. None of the deals actually pencil out. Nothing cash flows. And they say, well, how am I supposed to get started? I get it. I get the frustration. Competing with cash buyers used to be, okay, I'm a homeowner. I can afford to pay more. Most of the time when you're a cash buyer, you're looking at the price, call it $100,000, and you say, I'm going to offer 80. I'm going to offer 85. And the homeowner comes in and offers the full 100. And then the seller has to make a choice. Do I care more about the money, but maybe the potential that the financing doesn't come through? Or do I care about definitely getting the deal done and just taking the cash and running? And so it's going to depend on what the seller is looking for. I've got a deal right now, 6-unit that I'm looking at for my first deal with partners. I got some big announcements coming. Some very popular YouTube content creators might have reached out to me and asked for my advice in partnering up in on a Gary, Indiana deal. So we'll see if that happens. You guys will be the first to know. But anyways, the wholesaler, a deal gets brought to me, and it's a 6-unit building with a value add potential. 2 of the units need to be remodeled. 4 of them are already rented out at market rent. And I'm like, hey, this is a great opportunity. 6 units, great cash flow, value add. We'll take it from the 190 they're asking to 200K just by putting in 40 to 50K. So I was like, this is actually a fantastic deal with equity, with everything. But there's no way a non-cash buyer can swoop this deal. That wholesaler is not looking to do a regular loan. A regular loan won't even qualify for it because 2 of the units need to be remodeled to the extent where it'll never pass an inspection or an appraisal. And so sometimes you just can't buy. But sometimes when price does matter, you can. But then the problem comes in, if rates are so high and price is so high, your monthly payment's so high, is it actually good for you to even buy that deal? And that is an ever-changing metric, literally on a daily basis.
So,
That's true.
and I always say the name when I see it, but Booger Fart Boy
I
asks
love
the
it.
question, and this ties into Yoder's comment of, how do you compete with cash buyers? It's how do you compete with every buyer in a market like this when there's less transactions happening? There's a lot of demand, so there's a lot of people competing for the same deals. But Booger Fart Boy, do you guys have a video on what strategies work in certain economic conditions? I haven't broken down like in this seller's market, in this buyer's market, in this bull market, in this on one of those, but I have made several videos in the last 6 months on what's shifted in the market. So here's the Cliff Notes version of what worked for the last 10 years and what's working for me now. So for 10 years, speed was important. There was a lot of demand, interest rates were coming down, prices were going up. I wanted to get an offer in before the seller realized they were going to get a ton of offers, over asking, waiving contingencies, offering to name their kids after the seller, whatever the buyer was trying to do to get on their radar. So if you can get your offer in fast enough. So my agent and my lender knew that I needed my letter of pre-qualification and my DocuSign offer sent within an hour, maybe 2 if it was 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday, or I'm going to the next lender and next agent, right? They knew they had that time frame. And so if I can get an offer made, and then even a better offer would come in later, if the seller had accepted my offer, I'd have that sunk cost theory where they feel like they've already interacted with me. Even though a better offer came, they're not going to take it. That's not the case anymore. So here's what shifted in the current market. And I think I could say but I've shifted to watching days on market. Instead of the second it comes out, I want to know my market so well I can have an offer that I would accept made. So now, when I see a property that's been listed on the MLS 3 or 4 times longer than normal, what offer makes sense to me that ignores the list price? So the cash buyers are often looking to buy the cleanest properties. It's not always a cash buyer with a big rehab budget, right? They are buying the cleanest stuff. It goes quick. So what we're doing is looking for the same thing I've looked for consistently, is the listing that's listed by a lazy agent that doesn't have the time or knowledge to list it well. My most recent purchase has one photo of the front that doesn't show that it's an up-down duplex because it's on a hill. The second part of the duplex is down. It's listed in a single-family listing. I had to actually drive out here with Millennial Mike to look at the place to try to figure out if it was a duplex or a single-family house. was listed for over 100 days in counties where the average in Washington State, the average days on market is between 6 and 9 days. So 100 is the outlier. Once I had my offer accepted, there were several investors that I talked to that said they absolutely would have paid more than what I did with a cash offer. But the listing was done so bad. So look for things that people are missing. Sometimes it's Google Earth, sometimes it's finding a listing, driving by, but it's watching days on market now and making an offer that makes sense at numbers that get you the return you're looking for, instead of getting the offer in so fast the seller doesn't know what's going to happen. So that's what shifted for me in the current economic situation.
Yeah. If I finished up my point, it would be, what I was talking earlier is like, sometimes you just can't compete. And so, but you shouldn't be looking to compete ever. I don't want to compete. What I want is that deal that nobody else knows about. This is why it's so important to network. That wholesale deal that came to me, that's not on the market. It's an off-market deal. Now that wholesaler has a list of individuals that he brings deals to, but that list is smaller than the total amount of people looking on the MLS or looking at a market. So you want to compete with as few people as possible. And if I got to run a race against 100 people, the odds that somebody's faster than me is pretty good. If I got to run a race against 3 people, the odds that I can outrun them or, cheat, knock them down are pretty good, And so what you should be doing is trying to compete with as few people as possible and give yourself every single advantage that you can. I mean, it literally can come down to personality. People will like you better. People will like your reputation better. People, even things like having a YouTube channel. This is why I tell people all the time, they need to make a YouTube channel. Not because you're going to get very big and successful and famous on YouTube. I'm not. I have 7,500 subscribers after years of doing this. I don't make money from YouTube. I am not successful. However, when somebody Googles Gary, Indiana real estate, every single video is owned by me. I am the king of Gary for a reason. I own all of the Googleable search terms for Gary, Indiana, Northwest Indiana, Lake County, Indiana. I own that. And so I've had professional soccer, World Cup professional soccer players. I've had famous newscasters from other countries. I've had professional basketball players. I've had rappers. All these people who are saying to themselves, I've got to take my big money athlete stuff and start investing somewhere. And maybe they came from the area, or maybe they were just poking around BiggerPockets and they saw something. And I've had these people reach out to me, and I'm always blown away at the connections that I've made. And I'm sworn to secrecy on most of these people. But you don't have to become successful at YouTube to get these opportunities. Networking can just be, nobody makes videos about Hardin County, Kentucky, where my friend Justin invests. And I'm like, Justin, I understand you're a little bit self-conscious about the fact that you're not as compendious in your speech and you don't, articulate quite as well as you wish you would. First of all, it'll get better with time. Second of all, there's no competition. You're the only guy. They have to watch your video. They have to watch it. So make the videos. Nobody talks about Dover, New Hampshire. Or there's people who talk about Seattle. There's not people who talk about Pierce County, Washington. You can own the search terms for your area, and that's how deals will come to you. I get emailed all the time. Deals come to me before they go to anybody else because I'm the only guy that's out there.
So it's ironic. If you own a business, tree service, you make furniture, whatever it is, you should have a YouTube channel. You should make it. So because you become the searchable of the most videos that you've made. So do you know what? If you Google to find me, Mike, random guess, what term do you think people would Google to find me mostly online?
Binder strategy.
You would think binder strategy. No, it's $89,000 in bad debt.
I like it.
You search that, I'm like the top 20 responses there. So if I was a debt consolidator, debt fixer, I would have made this YouTube channel to be the number one search thing there for that. Didn't think that one through. That's how effective it is. And there's people right now hopefully watching going, what, 89K in bet? Oh, wow, Dion. There's 20 videos of Dion. There's articles on there from Business Side, all of this kind of stuff. All Nighter Hider says, question. Now, All Nighter Hider can quote some of the coolest, rare, obscure precedence laws. So I have serious respect for the intellect that All Nighter Hider has, but there's a danger when you're that smart. Do you guys think possibly the powers that be have kept starter home inventory low, building requirements, in an effort to keep that sector strong because of the wealth effect?
You want me to take this one?
Sure, and I'll let you know if the lag works or not.
Okay, let me know. So I think that what they've largely done is, I think it's honestly, I think it's cluelessness. I think they really don't know how to do or how to specify what people really truly need. So right now, whether I build a 4,000 square foot house or a 1,200 square foot house, my impact fee is exactly the same. That makes less than no sense. Why am I paying 15,000 bucks for an impact fee for 1,200 square feet versus $1,000 for a sewer connection fee when it's, again, 1,200 square feet versus 4,000? These are the things that make no sense, and why, largely speaking, government remains inefficient and unintelligent on items that they don't really know anything about. Because if they would loosen those things up, the NIMBY concept of not in my backyard, I just saw a 23 or 32 house development get basically cut because people didn't want small 1,000 square foot homes in their 3,000 square foot neighborhood where the access point was. So it remains to be people not understanding if there's 32 more houses being added, that then shares the tax burden with the city. So it's people just generally not understanding how things work, which is why 69% of people live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, Matt makes a really good point there with the residential equivalency unit. When you go to connect for water or sewer, it doesn't say, is this a 2-bedroom house or a 4-bedroom house? It says, is it a house? Is it a duplex? Is it a triplex? Is it a fourplex? They call residential unit. And it's $30,000 to $50,000 basically to just get the permits and pay the impact fee. And then you've got to pay somebody to actually put in the sewer lines versus that starter home versus the more expensive one. So I'm not a hider. I don't know that it's the powers that be that have done it on purpose, but I think builders chase profit because they're not stupid, right? Not because they're aggressively trying to control the number of starter homes that there are. I mean, the more starter homes there are, the more people that in the future can buy the bigger homes. So I don't know that there's the benefit there. We've made it so expensive to build any house that it doesn't make sense to build a house unless it has a certain starting point in price. Jamil, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, this will be my last answer because I'm going to go play some soccer to stay in shape and then go spend Thanksgiving with the family. When it comes to blaming the powers that be, I'm all for the conspiracy theories. And I think that there's a lot of shady people in the government. I think that the men with the black suits come and tell the politicians what to do all the time. I think that there is a certain level of conspiracy that happens. I don't trust the government. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in building strong communities and strong networks so that we as the people can do what's best for us. And it is our responsibility, as outlined by the founding fathers, that if the government becomes corrupt and evil, you got to stand up against it. You got to stand up and do the right thing for your rights, for the people around you, for your kids, for the next generation. I hope to leave a country as good for the next generation as the one that was left for me. However, when we look at, are the powers that be manipulating the economy in a certain way? Sometimes the answer is yes, but sometimes you have to remember that the government is highly incompetent. It's very, very slow. And a lot of what we want to attribute to intentional planning and malice can actually be attributed to stupidity and is just the result of poor policy and idiocy. When the communist Soviets were trying to have central government planners set prices as they were locking in prices and trying to combat inflation and trying to figure out how do we manage an economy that we no longer let the invisible hand, as Adam Smith talked about, dictate the economy. They were setting prices for 400 items a day. 400 items a day. How do you set the price of an item when you weren't involved in the process of creating it? What's the cost of a pencil? What's the cost of a burrito? What's the cost of a house? If you weren't actually directly involved in producing that asset, you don't know what all of the thousands, maybe even millions of smaller costs were that totaled up to your final cost, and then you've got to add profit on top of it. So when we sit here and say, is the government artificially manipulating something? Sometimes the answer is yes, but sometimes I don't think that they're competent enough to do that because they couldn't even set prices for basic things. It's just too big of a system. I think a lot of it is reactionary. What do we see? Every time there's a problem like, oh, there's a money shortage, there's a housing shortage, there's any type of shortage. Okay, well, let's do the one thing we know how to do as the government. Throw money at the problem and say we're fixing it and buy votes. And that does nothing but exacerbate the situation. and then create more downstream effects later that we all have to sit here and explain and talk about. They'll never figure it out because the popular thing is to be Santa Claus close to an election cycle and then hope that people want to vote for Santa instead of the mean people that say, we'd love to teach you how to fish because giving you a fish ain't working.
Love it.
Love you guys. I will see you later. I'm going to continue watching. Matt, you look great. Dion, even greater.
Happy Thanksgiving, troll.
Bye, guys.
See you, Mike. Josh says, if rates drop, to quote Bill Murray, human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Absolutely. Totally agree.
Yes.
Weirdly, it's a bloodbath where people who own assets will get stupid rich instead of just being filthy rich.
Yes.
Rob, it took a pandemic to get the rates that low last time. I would hate to see what it takes to get back there. Correction, pandemic. Yeah, there you go.
The same thing.
Good
Same
job.
thing.
Yeah. No, I don't want to see the next thing that's created to cause doubt and mass hysteria. And as my handyman always puts it, I'm finished with the project, but it was unicorn blood and koala pee everywhere. Financial firefighter Peter Schiff has called 19 of the last 2 recessions. That's a great way to put it. That's beautiful. And if that's a quote from Jason Hartman, I love it. That's actually another channel I think people should be checking out. Brian, I see reventure consulting for fun. Crash will come one day, but that is why you have positive cash flow properties and have 6 months reserves. Eventually, he'll be right. Right? Eventually. It might be 2050. It might be 2024, but he'll be right when he's right. If he just never stops calling for it. It's the people who are changing their actions because they think he's been right every time. A lot of these economic cycles exceed the lifespan of people predicting them. Good point, Rob. Matthew, crash assumes the markets are boiling, baby boomers are retiring, and will add to the demand for new homes in FLA, in Florida, leaving other areas to retire. So, yeah, a lot of the baby boomers that people would normally expect to sell their 4 or 5 bedroom house, go get a 2-bedroom house, downsize, reduce their cost of living. The 3 or 4 bedroom house had an interest rate or is paid off, and then the 2-bedroom that they're going to buy now has a 6 or 7% interest rate. So even the sale of a more expensive asset into the one with the higher interest rate isn't happening. So you kill 2 there. It's not just the move-up buyer that's been locked in place with low interest rates. It's also the retirees. Question from Brian. And then my chat moved, which I like, because that means comments are coming in. I appreciate each one. What are your thoughts on limiting 5 properties to one market? I am thinking of Indy, where I have property, and look for a new market like Phoenix because it will crash. I am a believer in diversification in your portfolio. I personally like my properties all within an hour and a half of each other. So I'm not multi-state, but I am definitely multi-market, right? My properties, I prefer to be at least 10 miles apart, and almost all of them meet that measure. 1, 2 properties that are 7 miles apart, but I'm looking for several economic drivers. So when you say, well, Phoenix crashed, absolutely, Phoenix can crash, but what about Chandler? What about Glendale? What about the new chip factory town that's being built west of Glendale, right? It's not, even Phoenix as a market isn't local. Scottsdale had one of the hugest swings in the 2008 crash. You'd have $1.1 million homes going for $400,000. You didn't have $200,000 homes going for $10,000, right? It wasn't that big of a swing. It might have been a bigger percentage, but it wasn't as big a dollar value swing as Scottsdale, and Scottsdale is considered to be in the Phoenix market. So if you're in Indy and you have 5 properties, I would be looking at, and I'm assuming you think Indy is Indiana, right? So you have Millennial Mike, who has a lot in Gary, but then you have, it's like White Center, and he's got one in Chicago, and you've got all these little 10 miles away different things that might not be impacted by the same crash. And Matt, you're in 3 different cities, right? 3 different kind of local markets.
Yeah, five cities, but but mine are more clustered because I'll go with the same type of I'll go with the same asset or different asset type in those markets. So then that takes you off of what would necessarily be the same economic impact. So some commercial and things like that.
Right.
So
We
if
were
I'm
talking-
if I'm in Indy and he's actually in Indianapolis, I'd be looking in suburbs of Indianapolis.
and
is
kind of
what I would
spreading
be
them
looking
out. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of having to go all the way to Arizona. Like you're literally talking about having to rebuild a business all over again 1,000 miles away. That's a lot of effort, time, energy that people, if you calculate how much effort, time, energy you're going to put into that, likely your return is going to be substandard.
You're right. Yeah, it's learning a whole new market. And the only way that I
Correct.
was going to do a whole new market, if I got to the point where I couldn't find what I was looking for here in Washington and moving into Gary, Indiana, was piggybacking on Mike's pre-built network. So maybe if Indy's not working and you go to Phoenix, maybe you picked Phoenix because you have boots on the ground there, or you have another investor who you can piggyback on or with. I wouldn't just pick it because I think it's one of the ones that's going to crash. Josh, when we were talking about which channels people watch, says you, along with Christian and Cody, are really the only four I watch. Maybe it's because you guys are local to me. I would agree with that. If Zuber wasn't in Vegas and Matt wasn't in Siberia, and the four of us, Christian, Cody, me, and Mike, are here in Washington, so maybe that's some of us are local. Michael has a question. What are your views on what to do with properties that dip in and out of alligator status due to rent fluctuations and HOA fee increases? Make a large principal down payment and recast the mortgage? So if you're dipping in and out of alligator status, to me, it sounds like it was a bad deal to start with, right? The first thing that would be a deal killer for me is I don't buy anything in an HOA. I own one property in an HOA because I bought it before I was an investor. I bought it as a home, and the well system there makes the HOA. I will not buy anything else in an HOA, not as an investment property. And Matt is an example of one of the reasons why. Had a $70,000 plus random assessment come in that basically said, oh, you're going to sell the property now, or take out a whole nother mortgage and kill your cash flow, like the choices that are there. So the HOA, if it was me, and I can't tell, I don't know any of the details of your situation, so this is not me telling you what to do. This is what I would do in a situation if I owned a rental in an HOA where it fluctuated and I was sometimes I got to sell it. Right. My goal is that I keep my properties until death do us part. Like all of my properties should perform better than all of my marriages. But in that case, if it dips into alligator status, it means you don't have the margin. It's not a good deal. It's kind of like, and I hear people reference this often. They'll say, I make $100 a month in cash flow. So in a year, I profit $1,200, and I had my water heater go out and it cost $1,400 to replace. So I lost $200 this year. And it means to me that they're not running their numbers right, because when you buy a rental, we are setting aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy. If you have an HOA, if you are one of the people who buys rentals that are in an HOA, your calculations should include money being set aside for HOA fluctuations, for HOA random assessments, or it's not a good deal, right? If you're not accounting for the fact that you're going to have to put a roof on in 5, 10, 15, 30 years and setting aside for it now, that's a bad rental. Just because it makes money, if you don't pay for your future repairs, doesn't make it a good deal.
Yeah, real quick, back to Josh's question as far as watching only guys in a certain market. I think that's flawed only if they have largely the same skill set. So there's a number of skill sets between Cody and Christian and Millennial Mike and yourself. I think the challenge is that there's also gaps that are still left. And the idea is understanding as many different disciplines as possible so you can create that many more opportunities for yourself. And clearly Eliana wants to participate as well. So
Brian asks, are there any standard boilers HVAC you guys recommend? I'm looking at budgeting them for my single family house, preemptive upgrade. What do you recommend for these big costs? I would ask Brian, where do you live? Because if you're in Siberia with Matt, this is a very important question. This is like, I would say probably top 5 expenses you're going to have. So you really need to consider this. If you're in Washington State, I hate HVAC systems. 2 of my properties have them, and they're the only ones that ever have HVAC problems. We do baseboard heat, having cadet heaters installed at the place where I'm at, like that. There's other ways of doing that that are much more cost effective, less problematic, unless you're in one of those places where it gets negative 30 for 11 months out of the year there, Matt?
It's only like 3 months out of the year, but it's chilly. Like today today it's 46. So not horribly cold. It's Thanksgiving weekend, but yeah, if you're looking for something to really do kind of everything, you want to look at like an IBC, what's called a combi boiler, where an IBC, it gives you on-demand hot water and also gives you enough heat to keep anything warm. And then you can look at mini splits in most of the other parts of the country. Well, everybody have a fantastic Thanksgiving. My kids clearly aren't interested in me participating in the live stream. So
you should be hanging out with your family, Matt. Go do that. And I would hang out with my family, but I've already met them.
We're driving, so I was losing nothing. But have a great Thanksgiving, Dion. I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Ciao. I'll be wrapping up here in a minute so everybody can go hang out with their families. Thanks for hanging out with us on this random live stream on a Thursday, right? That's when Thanksgiving happens. How are the homeless in Matt's cold land? That's a good question. I would say migratory. That would be my guess. Keith has a comment here. Take a lawn chair in your trunk with the junk and find a property you like. Sit in the yard for an hour, like it, buy it. Have I done that? Yeah, I think I went to 2 or 3 properties before buying them after making offers on them. Know your market, know where to avoid. I hope this video at least made you think. Think of the things that you're thankful for. I am in some ways thankful for the Crash Bros. Zuber has pointed this out on One Rental at a Time, that every time a Crash Bro video comes out, 2% of our competition goes away. Don't be that 2%, or you'll never be part of the 1%. And if you hate the 1%, you'll probably never be part of them either. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.